Saluton, and welcome to the latest in our Esperanto 101 series. We're going to talk about a few things that I mentioned at the end of the last video: euphony, reflexive pronouns, and one more use for the accusative, and also a few things that I forgot to mention: the difference between a predicate and an object, and relative pronouns. As I was reviewing the content for the next few videos, I realized there were a few more things I could squeeze into this one that would be helpful that didn't really quite go anywhere else. So, let's get started. Euphony, which means good sounding, is when words in a language change because of the context, the other words around them, or some other reason, so that they sound better. In Esperanto, there's a rule explicitly providing for one little bit of euphony in the language. The 16th rule, pardon me, the 16th rule. The 16th rule of the Dexes Reguloi, the last of the 16 rules, says that the A on la and the final O on a noun are both droppable if it would make things sound better, if it would fit better in a poem, or whatever reason you like. There's only really two rules that govern this. One, Zamenhof says you should put an apostrophe in the written form to show where the missing vowel was dropped. So della patro could be del patro. Della tago could be della tag, or del tag, or del tago for that matter. Dropping the final O of patro is a little tricky because pater doesn't really pronounce cleanly without the final O, but tago, it's perfectly fine. So the first of these two rules is, again, put an apostrophe where the vowel is missing. The second rule is that the stress of the word does not change when you do this. In other words, the penultimate syllable with the O here is esperantisto, right? So tis is the accented syllable. If you drop the O, technically the next to last syllable of the word would now be the an, esperan, but it's still accented esperantiste, even though there's no O anymore. So, de l'esperantiste. So, the syllable which receives the accent does not change if you drop a vowel for euphony. Po. Po is a preposition that's used with numbers to distribute things. It's sort of like per or each in English. Here's a couple of examples of it being used. Mi donis al ciu el la infanoi po tri pomoi. I gave to all of the kids 3 apples each. Now, see, in English, we have a postposition there. We say 3 apples each, or 3 apples apiece. In Esperanto, it's a preposition. So, po tri pomoi. Now notice one other thing. Although the apples are the direct object, they're what I'm giving the kids, there's no N on the end of pomoi, because po sort of takes the place of the direct object itself here. You know, tri pomoi is part of the phrase that that is governed by the preposition po, and it doesn't really get applied as an object. So it's mi donis po tri pomoi. Nothing really can take the N there. So it's a bit of an odd case. Here's another example. La substatoi de Usono electas po du senatanoi. The states of the USA elect 2 senators apiece, or 2 senators each. So it's just a helpful little preposition that's used when you're distributing numbers, or distributing numbers of things across a collection. Predicates. This is a real simple concept grammatically, but it might not be one that an English speaker is necessarily familiar with. There's a difference between these two sentences. You notice that the first sentence has an accusative N on the end of hundo, hundon, right? Li vidas hundon. The second one does not. Li estas hundo. That's because the thing that comes after the verb esti, to be, is not a direct object. It's a predicate. In this case, it's a predicate noun. This is a subtle bit of linguistics, but esti is really a verb that links two concepts together. It associates them. It says these are the same thing. It's not saying that one does something to the other, okay? So, never put an N on the second half of a pair that's joined by esti or any of its forms. In case you noticed any examples in all our slides up to this point and went, why isn't there an N there? That's why. Esti doesn't take a direct object. It makes a predicate. It links the two things together. He and dog are the same. So, no N. Reflexive pronouns. So, supposing I say I talk to myself. In Esperanto, this would be mi parolas al mi. I talk to I. But, in English, we have to say to myself grammatically there. But in Esperanto, it would be mi parolas al mi. You talk to yourself would be vi parolas al vi. He talks to whom in li parolas al li? See, me definitely refers to the person doing the talking, and vi definitely refers to the person listening, but there could be multiple different li's. Let's uncompress those pronouns into proper names and see what I mean. Bob could be speaking to another guy named Dave, in which case li would still be the correct pronoun to describe who he's talking to, but he could also be talking to himself, and normally you think, well, Bob's a li. In fact, that's what I said for the sentence. Li parolas al li. So, with third person, there's this extra pronoun called the reflexive pronoun. And that's not a typo for she in the last line there. That's actually si. See, si is the reflexive pronoun. It's what you use in third person when you mean the same thing as the subject. So if I say li parolas al li, strictly speaking, that means one man is speaking to a different man. If I say li parolas al si, that means he speaks to himself. Now let's look at the reflexive, I keep screwing up those two words, the reflexive pronoun being used in a couple of more sentences. Li tre estimas lin. Estimi is to think well of something. So, li tre estimas lin. He really thinks highly of him. This means of some other man. And you would read that sentence and go, oh, this subject's not such a bad guy. He's looking up to somebody. Li tre estimas sin is himself. So again, si, not she, is the relative pronoun. I did it again. The reflexive pronoun. I'm not going to edit that out, just so you know how easily I screw that up. It's the reflexive pronoun, and in this case it's got the N because it's accusative. He thinks highly of himself. Li tre estimas sin. That doesn't sound so good. But now let's turn the tables a little bit. Li tre estimas lian edzinon. He thinks highly of his wife, but in this case we used li, and that means it's some other man's wife. Right? Now, I mean, I think highly of the wives of the women who are married to the guys who are married to female senators, right? So it's perfectly okay to think highly of some other man's wife, but I'm just using this to sort of tease things a little bit. Okay, that was terrible. Li tre estimas Leon edzinon. He thinks highly of his wife. Leon is his. But it means some other man's, because if we wanted it to mean his own wife, we would use the reflexive pronoun. So, li tre estimas Sion edzinon. He thinks highly of his own wife. So that's how reflexive pronouns work. They're used in the third person when the subject is doing something to themselves or about themselves or about something where they are the possessive adjective. Right. So if, and strictly speaking, never mind strictly speaking, just shut up, we're good. Relative pronouns. Let me keep this straight. Relative versus reflexive. Relative pronouns are those things like who and whom in the middle of a sentence when you're linking clauses and thoughts together. In Esperanto, we use kiu and its derivatives as the primary relative pronoun. So let's see examples. Mi konas la viron kiu aĉetis pizzon. I know the man who bought pizza. Now, if I switch that around, it's mi vidis la pizzon kiun la viro aĉetis. I saw the pizza which the man bought. Now, you noticed in the first of those two sentences, it's kiu. In the second, it's kiun with an N. And why is that? Well, it's like who versus whom in English. Although in this case, the whom is a which because it's a pizza rather than a person. So in the clause that it's a part of, who bought pizza, the man is the one who bought pizza in the first sentence, and that's kiu. So since he's the subject of the clause, he doesn't get an N on the end. So it's kiu aĉetis pizzon. In the second one, the pizza is the object of the clause. The man is buying the pizza. So it gets an N. So what determines how the pronoun is inflected is how the pronoun is used inside its clause, not what it is in the bigger sentence. Because in the first sentence, the man is the object of the main clause, which is I know the man. Notice la viron has an N on the end of it, but in the clause, kiu does not. In the second sentence, the pizza and kiun are the objects in both clauses, so they both get N's. Those are the meals which he cooks. Tivi estas la manĝoj kiujn li kuiras. So the meals are the object of the clause. He cooks them. So it gets the N, but it also gets the J because it's plural meals. There are multiple meals. There's only one pizza in the second sentence, but in the third sentence, there's multiple meals. So kiujn li kuiras. And in the fourth case, I have kiu as the object of a preposition to emphasize that in this case, it does not take the N, whereas in English, you would say, to whom am I speaking or something. You would put the whom in there if it were in a prepositional phrase. But again, in Esperanto, you only use an N in a prepositional phrase when there's movement involved. Well, and again, this is sort of a confusing example perhaps, because there is movement involved, but remember the preposition al covers that without an N. So, mi vidis la domon, I saw the house, al kiu ili translogigas, to which they are moving. So again, kiu here is used as the object of a preposition, but it's a preposition that contains direction built in and doesn't need an N, therefore kiu doesn't get an N. So this is just a quick breeze through of several different ways in which you might see kiu being used as a relative pronoun, linking together two clauses of the sentence by saying, something that's mentioned in one clause is also part of the other clause. It's relating the two together. All right, one last use of the accusative. Remember when I showed you how to use the preposition yeah, which is the indefinite one? These are the exact same examples I used. One of the rules of the 16 rules says that you can omit the preposition if you put the accusative in instead. So we're going to drop the yeah from each of these examples and turn the thing inside the yeah phrase into the accusative. Now the rule also says that you can only do this if it doesn't lead to confusion. So we're going to do this and see what happens. So instead of mi credes ya amo, it's mi credes amon. I believe in love. Instead of ye la fantomo, it's la fantomon de Cesaro. I'll go at 3 o'clock becomes mi iros trian horon instead of ye tria horo. And let's drink to your health becomes ni trinku vian sanon. Okay, so we've removed the yeah and changed each of the objects into accusative form. But now let's break each one down and see if they work. I think mi credes amon sort of works, but what do you believe here? Are you saying that you believe in love? Are you saying you believe love as a concept? Or do you believe love as though it were a thing that's talking to you? Like, when love tells me to do something, I do it. So I think this one's a little bit iffy. What is love's role as the object of credas here? I don't like la fantomon de Cesaro because, again, imagine this is being used as an oath or sort of a, quasi-profanity. By the ghost of Caesar, right? If you drop the yeah, now you're saying the ghost of Caesar, which I suppose it's okay, especially because there is an N on there that tells you grammatically something is up. But to me, it just sounds like, you're actually seeing the ghost and you're reacting to it, which is a little weird. So I wouldn't really drop the yeah in the case of a minced oath like this. Mi iros trian horon. This works fine. This is possibly one of the most popular uses for dropping the preposition and replacing with the accusative is the time thing. To go cannot take an object. You don't go a thing, you just go, right? So trian horon can't possibly be the direct object of eros. So it must have some other relationship to it, and in this case, it's the time that it happens. So in this case, everything's good. And with ni trinku, I would say absolutely not, because you can drink a thing. Mi trinkas akvon, I drink water. So in this case, you're saying, let's drink your health. Not let's drink to your health. We're saying, let's drink your health. Now you're a vampire. You're drinking his health. So I don't think this is a good idea here. I think of the 4 examples we've given, the accusative shortcut is clearly the best when dealing with time. But ultimately, the rule of thumb is, if you're in doubt, keep the preposition. Okay, we sort of blasted through these different concepts at high speed here, but I want to tie up some loose ends before we do the complex verb forms, which are, as the name suggests, some of the most complicated and nuanced parts of Esperanto, but fortunately they're kind of rare, at least in basic communication. So don't panic, we'll get through them. Dankon pro la spektado.